I'm sorry, what exactly do you do again? That question came from some junior VP at a budget review meeting. He said it like I was a ghost that accidentally walked into the wrong PowerPoint. What I did, officially, was federal grant compliance. What I really did was keep the company from drowning in red tape, penalties, and late filings. While the execs paraded around with investor decks and three-syllable buzzwords, I was the one who made sure their innovation circus had a legal tent to perform in. Without my initials on about 7 different federal forms, their disruptive platform was just PowerPoint diarrhea. No one noticed me when things were going right. That was the goal. Like being the brakes in a self-driving car, only important the second you're gone. I started 7 years ago as a temp with a headache and a highlighter. First week, I noticed a date mismatch on our quarterly report to the Department of Energy. Pointed it out, fixed it. 2 weeks later, we avoided a $50K fine because of that exact correction. The CFO never said thank you, he just nodded, handed me a permanent badge, and said, "You're staying?" I stayed. Through acquisitions, reorgs, office moves, I learned the system. Every new grant I touched, I built a compliance trail so tight it could pass through a Senate audit. My desk had folders arranged like war maps. Color-coded tabs, post-its, a ceramic frog with googly eyes that I rubbed before every quarterly call. Superstition? Maybe, but we never missed a deadline. And then came the $10 million milestone. A combination of state sustainability funds, a federal clean tech grant, and one tiny rural initiative that I fought tooth and nail to include. When it cleared, I didn't throw a party. I just stuck a yellow post-it to my monitor that said, "You did that." That was my moment. No LinkedIn brag, no press release, just quiet pride. Oh, and hey, before we go any further, do me a favor. If you're listening to this and haven't hit subscribe yet, maybe now's the time. 90% of folks just listen and ghost us harder than legal ghosted our compliance training. And if you hit that like button too, you've got no idea how much it motivates our little team to keep digging up stories like this one. Anyway, they called me the funding whisperer, half joke, half truth. I didn't just manage grants. I predicted which ones would renew, which reviewers were sticklers for attachments, which deadlines were fake, and which would bury you if missed by a single keystroke. I didn't look like the backbone of a tech company. I wore the same $40 flats 3 years in a row. My cardigans had holes under the arms. My mug said world's okayest employee, and had a chipped rim from when someone dropped it during an office kitchen deep clean that cleaned absolutely nothing. But you know what? When the board had a question about why the quarterly disbursement hadn't landed, they didn't call the CFO. They called me. When a project manager panicked over a missing approval letter, I already had it saved in 3 places, including one printed copy in a folder marked "I told you so." I didn't run meetings, I ended them. My email threads didn't need follow-ups. My grant narratives read like small novels, and I knew how to sneak in the buzzwords funding officers liked without making it sound like corporate Mad Libs. I played the game. Quietly, smartly, I never bragged, never needed to. Then came Devin. Shiny teeth, loud ties, new COO with a resume full of efficiency reviews, and enough gym selfies to qualify as a protein powder influencer. He showed up at the all-hands like a Vegas magician with a spreadsheet, promising to cut costs, boost margins, and streamline legacy roles. That phrase, legacy roles, stuck in my head like a splinter. I watched him flip through org charts like they were expired coupons. When he got to mine, he didn't ask a question. Didn't even blink. Just tapped the screen and said that one's a cost center. Redundant. Grant reporting can be automated. He said automated like it was a magic word. Like you could feed a government grant portal into an AI and it would gracefully navigate the bureaucratic hellscape of contradictory regulations and PDF uploads that only open in Internet Explorer. I didn't panic. I just made a note. Devin does not understand compliance. And I waited, because I knew something he didn't. I had buried a clause in our last federal contract renewal, tucked between a dozen other legal phrases no one read. A clause so seemingly minor, even the lawyers missed its weight. But I didn't. It was called the key person clause. And buddy, it was about to ruin Devin's quarter. The email subject line was corporate anesthesia, upcoming all hands, strategic efficiency review, and operational alignment. I read it with the same dead-eyed dread you reserve for dentist appointments and Thanksgiving with your in-laws. The meeting was scheduled for Tuesday at 9 a.m., which in HR speak meant one thing. Devin was about to start swinging the axe, and someone's neck was already penciled in. Devin strutted into the conference room like he was late to his own TED talk. He wore a slate gray suit too slim for a man who skipped leg day, and a Bluetooth headset like he might get an emergency call from Elon Musk mid-sentence. His voice had that startup evangelist lilt, like he'd been practicing in front of his mirror with motivational TikToks and a shaker bottle of pre-workout. "We're entering a phase of hyperlean restructuring," he said, using more buzzwords per minute than a crypto bro in a podcast intro. "This company's future hinges on agility, automation, and aggressive cost realignment." Projector lit up with a slide that said, "Legacy roles review, Q2, Q3 targets." My stomach dipped. I'd been through 3 layoffs in my time. I could smell one coming the way farmers smell rain, but this one felt different. It wasn't a storm, it was a controlled burn. Devin clicked to the next slide. Boxes, names, titles, lines in red. Redundant roles will be transitioned or sunsetted. If a process can be digitized, we digitize. If a report can be templated, we templatize. If a function can be eliminated, he trailed off, then smiled. We optimize. I wasn't the only one holding my breath. I saw our receptionist clench her jaw. The facilities manager rubbed his temples. But it wasn't until slide 12 that I saw my own ghost. There was a table labeled Grants and Compliance Functions Proposed Automation Pathways. Beneath it, a bulleted list. Federal certification, filing AI workflow pending. Q3, Q4 narrative reporting under review. Departmental sign-offs, reassignment in progress. No name, no Christina, just processes. Like I'd already been vacuum sealed into a CSV. I raised my hand. Devin glanced at me surprised, like I'd broken the fourth wall. Quick question, I said, polite, measured. Has a tool been selected for DOE portal authentication? Your system uses multifactor tied to a single credential set. He waved it off. We're vetting platforms. We'll get there. We won't, I thought, but I smiled. Let him find out the hard way that the Department of Energy doesn't run on Slack integrations and vibes. After the meeting, I walked back to my office, cubicle with walls high enough to feel like solitude, and opened the shared grant calendar. Q3 renewal deadlines, internal submission targets, backup signatory matrix. Then I saw it. The Q3 folder was already populated with draft versions of the narrative and budget spreadsheets, and someone else's initials in the file name. That stopped me cold. Those initials weren't mine, and they sure as hell weren't from anyone on the compliance team, because newsflash, there wasn't a compliance team, there was me. I scrolled down, no version history on my end, no draft approvals, no metadata showing the usual sequence we used for edits. Just a spreadsheet Frankenstein together by someone who thought pivot tables were a personality trait. The email that followed made my hands go cold. Subject, transition support your upcoming meeting HR. 15 minutes. Conference room C. I sat there for a full minute staring at it. I'd never had a transition meeting in my life. I was the one people came to when they needed transition help. I was the one who onboarded 3 finance heads, 2 CTOs, and a revolving door of clueless grant interns. And now I was being walked to the plank like a line item. I grabbed my mug, walked to the hallway, and passed 2 interns debating what flavored Celsius to DoorDash. The glass door to conference room C was already closed. Inside, HR Director Meredith, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else, and Devin, holding an iPad and smirking like he'd just bested a dragon in a spreadsheet duel. We appreciate everything you've done for the company, Meredith began, already deflating her voice like a child apologizing on command. This is about strategic alignment, Devin added, his tone so slick it left a film on the walls. Your function is being consolidated under finance. Our analytics show we can save close to $200K annually. Wow, I said, that much. He nodded, pleased with himself. Good for you, I added, finishing my coffee. You'll need it. I didn't cry, didn't argue, didn't ask for clarification. I just stood up, placed my badge on the table, and said, be sure whoever takes over has the Q3 authentication token. Portal resets take 10 business days. Devin blinked. Meredith didn't look up. I left, not just the room. The building, my legacy, quietly, with precision. Because while Devin was busy counting dollars on his little screen, I was remembering a clause in the federal clean energy grant I'd authored 2 years ago, tucked deep inside the compliance matrix. A clause titled, Key Person Designation Removal Without Pre-Approval Constitutes Breach. No one had flagged it, not legal, not the CFO, not even me until now. But Devin was about to find out that cutting corners with federal contracts doesn't make you a genius. It makes you unemployed. There's a specific kind of silence that falls in an HR offboarding meeting, sterile, padded, and thick like the air inside a walk-in freezer. That's where I found myself, sitting across from Meredith, the HR director with a master's in eye contact avoidance, and Devin, the COO who smelled faintly of self-tanner and hubris. The iPad on the table displayed my termination paperwork like it was a restaurant menu. Devin scrolled, tapped, and spun the screen toward me. This streamlines a lot of operations, he said, like we were debating whether to cancel cable. Honestly, Christina, software's catching up. We don't need the human bandwidth anymore. That phrase, human bandwidth, made me want to peel the drywall. He was trying to be smooth about it, like this was just another Tuesday decision, not a butcher's knife dressed up in a PowerPoint. Meanwhile, Meredith busied herself with the company-branded folders like she was assembling welcome kits, instead of laying off a woman who'd built their compliance infrastructure from scratch. Finance will absorb your responsibilities, Devin said, as if I were handing off a casserole recipe instead of 3 federal grant cycles, a dozen subawards, and 4 active audit logs. Allocated 2 weeks for transition, but no pressure, your exit package includes PTO payout and standard non-compete. He smiled. I didn't. I took the stylus and signed, not because I agreed, but because I already knew what they didn't. The clock was now ticking, and every second they thought they'd saved was a second closer to detonation. You'll need to make sure whoever takes over reads the renewal timelines, I said flatly, slipping the folder back across the table. Devin blinked like he didn't understand the language. Meredith typed something into her laptop with all the grace of a court stenographer trying not to record a felony. I stood up, collected my things, just my mug, my lucky frog, and a small manila envelope from my drawer. No drama, no tears, I didn't even look at my nameplate. That cubicle had been my sanctuary and my coffin. At my desk, I logged out of every platform, didn't delete a thing. No booby traps, no scorched earth. I wasn't some disgruntled intern with admin rights. I was Christina from the Claws, and unlike Devin, I knew that nuclear revenge didn't need a countdown, it needed patience. I left one envelope in the bottom drawer of the compliance filing cabinet. It wasn't labeled. No red flags. Just sealed and positioned where someone would eventually find it if they looked hard enough. Inside, a full printed timeline of every federal grant renewal through next fiscal year. Passwords not included, because those weren't mine to give anymore. On my way out, I passed the intern who once asked me, "What's the difference between a grant and a contract?" I gave her a nod. She smiled, unsure of what had just happened. Security didn't escort me. No one clapped. No one stood. The only person who even acknowledged me was the janitor, Pete, who offered a soft, "Take care, Miss C," while pushing his mop bucket. "Keep the fridge clean, Pete," I said. "Won't be the same without your yogurt wars," he grinned. It wouldn't be the same, period. As I crossed the parking lot, the Ohio sky was its usual late summer soup, gray and indifferent. I got in my car, gripped the wheel, and sat there for a moment listening to the tick of the cooling engine. My heart wasn't racing. It was waiting, because I knew Devin hadn't read a single page of the grant compliance charter. Knew he thought the key person clause was just a formality. Knew he had no idea that failure to notify the funding agency before termination triggered not just a breach, but a full-scale clawback. I'd written it myself, with language so dry, so technical, even legal skimmed it. But the feds wouldn't. They never skim. I looked back at the building one last time. A modern glass cage. Shiny, efficient, soulless. Let them run it with spreadsheets and swagger. Me, I was free, and they were already in breach. 3 days after I walked out, Devin reassigned my responsibilities to a junior finance analyst named Cody. Fresh out of college, still pronouncing procurement like it was a new Pokemon. Cody wore cuffed pants and a smartwatch he used to monitor his hydration levels. Bright-eyed, nervous, still believed in synergy and reusable coffee filters. His first official act as grant compliance coordinator, unofficial of course, no such title existed anymore, was to send a company-wide email with the subject line, "Friendly reminder, quarterly reports due." He attached a blank spreadsheet. No timeline, no narrative guide, no links to the DOE portal. Just a bare-bones Excel file with the kind of formatting that makes grant reviewers retire early. And yet, no one blinked. That was the terrifying part. No one panicked. Devin had told the department heads this was all under control. That finance had absorbed the workflows and streamlined reporting into a central visibility model. Buzzword soup, zero protein. Cody, bless his heart, didn't even know what logins he needed. He walked into Devin's office with a list I'd once called the Gauntlet: 6 unique credentials, 3 token generators, 2 secure file transfer protocols, and 1 legacy portal that still required Internet Explorer 11, a chicken bone, and a blood sacrifice to access. "Hey," Cody asked cheerfully, "do you know where the Q4 certification logins are?" Devin didn't even look up from his screen. "You'll figure it out." Cody nodded like a good soldier, retreating back to his desk with the digital equivalent of a treasure map written in pig Latin. Meanwhile, emails started piling up, harmless at first. "Just checking on the narrative status. Hey, have we finalized the subaward language? Reminder, Q4 begins in 10 business days, each one a raindrop tapping on the glass." The thing about grant portals is they don't scream when you miss a step, they just sit there, waiting, and when you finally hit submit with the wrong format or expired token, they log it. Automatically, permanently, and guess who they alert? Not you, not Cody, but the funding officer. And that's exactly what happened. By the end of week 1, Cody had tried and failed to log into the Clean Energy Grant portal. He got the security question wrong twice, then triggered a lockout. He panicked, Googled, found the help desk number, called it, was told to email instead. So he did. He emailed a federal grant administrator from his company email account and asked, in the most painfully polite language possible, "Hi, I'm taking over reporting duties from a recently transitioned team member. Could you please assist in resetting the portal login credentials for the upcoming quarterly submission?" It was a soft bomb, a polite detonation, because you don't just ask for credentials on a key person-protected grant. That's like walking into the Pentagon and requesting the nuclear codes because Janet from accounting went on vacation. Within 48 hours, the administrator replied, not to Cody, to the company's designated legal contact on file. Subject: urgent inquiry, unreported personnel. Change. The email was short, formal, lethal. "We've received a request to reassign grant access tied to an active key person. No amendment or formal notification has been filed. Please advise if Christina M. has been officially removed from the project and if so, on what date pre-approval was submitted. Cody never saw the reply. Legal did. Devin did. And that's when the real panic began. Suddenly, the office smelled like toner and terror. The glass-walled huddle rooms filled with whispers. Slack channels went eerily silent. I knew that silence well. It's what happens when the wolves realize they are already inside the fence. Still, Devin didn't make it public. He called it a hiccup, told legal to massage the language in a retroactive amendment filing. But grant officers aren't influencers. They don't care about your PR. The real kicker? That email triggered a review. Not just of the personnel change, but the entire project timeline. Funding officers don't operate in isolation. One red flag means a full sweep. Every receipt, every milestone, every line item on the budget gets re-examined like it's a crime scene. Cody, poor kid, had no idea. He just kept updating spreadsheets and resending blank drafts, wondering why no one replied. Meanwhile, I was at home, not watching the clock, not watching them burn, just watering my plants, sipping lukewarm coffee, and quietly enjoying the smell of incompetence roasting in its own panic. They thought compliance was optional. They were about to learn the hard way that federal funding doesn't do second chances. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Thick envelope, government-grade paper. The kind that smells like copier ink and existential dread. No marketing fluff. No hope this finds you well. Just the Department of Energy's letterhead and a subject line that hit like a crowbar. Notice of potential grant clawback project, ID hash 4839 CRF. It landed on legal's desk at 9:13 a.m. By 9:17, the head of legal, Marty, a man who once described grant compliance as a gentle breeze, had stopped breathing through his nose and switched to mouth mode. He forwarded it to Devin with the subject line, "We have a situation." Devin, who was busy doing his morning treadmill desk session, yes, that's a thing, didn't read the email right away. When he finally opened it, he skimmed the first paragraph, then laughed, out loud. "Alone. This is a formality," he muttered, waving the letter at Marty like it was a parking ticket. "They'll walk it back. It's just process." Marty didn't laugh. Marty didn't even blink. Just pointed to the third paragraph. "We note that the individual designated as key person, Christina M., has been removed from the project without prior notification or agency approval, as required under Section 3.4b of the grant agreement. This constitutes a material breach of terms. A clawback of disbursed funds in the amount of $3,228,000 is now under active review." Devin stopped chewing whatever protein bar was in his mouth. "Wait," he said, "we have a key person clause?" Marty didn't answer. He just slid over the original signed agreement. It was long, dry, unreadable to the average human brain. But on page 17, in plain legal English, designated key person Christina M., any change to this personnel assignment requires written approval by the funding agency prior to removal or reassignment. Failure to comply may result in full or partial revocation of funds. Devin leaned back like the air had been knocked out of him. "She was just a formality," he said again, softer this time. "She just filled out paperwork." Marty stared at him. "She wrote the paperwork." And that was the moment the first hairline crack split open in the executive illusion, that comforting delusion that certain people were invisible and therefore interchangeable. He hadn't just fired a compliance officer. They'd fired the only federally recognized authority for 3 active grant streams totaling over $3 million. See, the key person clause wasn't boilerplate. I had negotiated it myself 2 years ago during a renewal cycle when a project partner tried to cut corners. I wanted leverage, insurance, something in writing that said, "You screw with me, and you screw with the money." And I got it. Marty continued reading aloud, slowly, as if translating scripture, each clause a death sentence. Devin kept trying to downplay it. "Can't we just file a backdated amendment?" "Nope," Marty said, shaking his head. "The system timestamped everything. They already flagged the personnel change as unreported. And now that Cody emailed them, it's all on the record, so what the hell do we do?" Devin snapped. "First," Marty said, "you stop talking. Second, don't send a single email without me approving it. Third, you pray they let us fix this without escalating." But it was already too late for that. The agency had started a review, which meant frozen disbursements, frozen budgets, CFO alerts, and worst of all, board involvement. Because when your company books millions in government-backed innovation grants, you don't just lose that money quietly. It sets off alarms, delays payroll, cancels projects, sends investors digging through Tenkutikes with pitchforks. The letter included a request for documentation, personnel change logs, notification timelines, backup communications, system credential transfers. They had none. Cody's spreadsheet drafts were inadmissible. The portal login? Still locked. The sealed envelope I'd left in the filing drawer? Still untouched because no one had even thought to look there. And the funding agency's final line made it crystal clear. Absent immediate corrective action and justification, disbursed funds may be subject to full clawback and ineligibility for future participation in this program. Translation? Not only were they on the hook for $3.2 million, They were about to lose access to the next $10 million in grants still in pipeline review. Meanwhile, I was at a thrift shop, buying a cracked teapot I didn't need in a city that didn't care, wondering if Pete the janitor had found the yogurt I'd left behind in the break room fridge. I hadn't checked my phone in hours. Didn't need to. I knew the letter had landed. And I knew Devin was just beginning to realize something crucial. You can fire a person, but you can't fire a clause. It took them 4 full working days to do what I used to do in an hour: read the contract, not skim it, not search for keywords. Read it, start to finish, clause by clause, like a federal auditor with nothing to lose and a grudge against startups with too much swagger and not enough substance. Marty, the company's lead counsel, finally shut his door on a Monday morning, turned off his phone, and poured himself a thermos of stale conference room coffee. He laid out the full set of grant documents across his desk like an autopsy table. One for the Clean Energy Initiative, one for the Rural Deployment Fund, one for the Carbon Capture Pilot Program, each signed, each active, each with funds already spent. By noon, the color had started draining from his face. See, grant contracts are like loaded mousetraps. They look harmless until you reach for something you didn't fully understand. And Devin, in all his Harvard light brilliance, had reached for the one thing you never touch without gloves: the key person clause. Wasn't just in one contract. It was in 3, page 14. Section 3.4b, designated personnel. The following individual is deemed essential to project integrity and continuation: Christina M., Federal Compliance Coordinator. Any proposed change to this assignment requires prior written approval from the U.S. Department of Energy. Failure to notify constitutes material breach and grounds for immediate funding revocation. Unambiguous, final. Not only was I the named key person on all 3 grants, I was the only one. No alternates, no backups, no or designy, because I'd removed those options during negotiation. Quietly, intentionally. Back then, legal hadn't cared. They wanted the funding. They rubber-stamped my insertions, assuming I was just being thorough. Which, to be fair, I was. Marty reread the clause 3 times, then cross-referenced the date of my termination with the grant timelines. That's when he knew they were already dead. The day I walked out of the building, the timer started ticking. No notification had been sent, no amendment requested, no explanation filed, and Cody's bright-eyed login reset email had alerted the feds before legal even opened the original grant folder. Worse still, the quarterly reporting deadline was just 6 days away, and the portal still showed key person certification. Inactive panic doesn't look like a fire alarm. It looks like Marty locking his door and calling the board chair with a sentence that started, "You're going to want to sit down." He tried to soften it, tried to offer paths forward. Emergency reinstatement, possible backdated filings, maybe some kind of mea culpa narrative about internal miscommunication. But it was all Hail Marys and duct tape. Board chair asked, "Are we technically in breach?" Marty, ever the good soldier, hesitated, then said what no lawyer ever wants to say in a recorded meeting: "Yes, not potential breach, not under review, just yes, in breach of 3 active federal grants, with a total value exceeding $3.2 million, not counting pending renewals and multi-year extensions." Devin, upon hearing the news, tried to claim the clause was never escalated to his attention, said he thought it was boilerplate, said Marty should have flagged it harder. Marty's reply was a masterclass in calm decapitation. "You mean the clause where she literally named herself as the federally required signatory?" On page 14, in bold, that clause, Devin had nothing. Just sat there, blinking, like he was trying to control plus Z reality. The crisis response team was formed that afternoon. A war room was set up. Slide decks were built. Talking points were drafted for investor relations. HR scrubbed my exit paperwork to see if anything could be spun as mutually agreed. Spoiler alert, it couldn't. And all the while, that cursed portal kept glowing red like a warning light on the dash of a car no one knew how to fix. Key person certification, inactive. They tried to reset it, tried to swap in a new name, but the portal wouldn't let them. It wasn't a login issue, it was a compliance lock. Set by me? You see, I didn't just manage deadlines, I programmed the internal logic for how those renewals worked. I'd worked with IT to integrate 2-factor authentication tied directly to my employee ID. Not because I was power-hungry, because I knew what would happen if someone careless, someone like Devin, tried to fake their way through a certification just to meet a deadline. Now, that system was holding the line. And the only person who could unlock it, well, she was currently sipping sangria on a friend's porch, watching the leaves change and reading a paperback novel about a woman who burns her ex's house down and never gets caught. They didn't know where I was. They didn't know how to reach me. And most importantly, they didn't know yet that I wasn't coming back. Not unless I made the rules, all of them. The email came through my personal account. Not my old work address, not my LinkedIn inbox, not even a phone call. Just a plain, subject-less message from a burner domain that reeked of legal counsel scrambling for plausible deniability. The signature at the bottom, Trent Delacroix, board chair, Innovatech Solutions, cute. The body was short. 7 lines, no greeting, no emojis, no flattery. We're hoping you'll consider assisting with an urgent matter regarding active grant status and personnel certification. As you are aware, some compliance processes were disrupted following your transition. We are facing potential consequences. Your expertise would be highly valued. Please let us know your availability. No mention of the clawback, no mention of the formality comment, no apology, just the linguistic equivalent of a white flag jammed into a corporate inbox. I read it once, then again, and then I closed my laptop and poured myself a second cup of coffee. Let them wait. 3 hours later, I replied with 2 words. What terms? The response came within 15 minutes, clearly drafted by legal this time. Polished language, reinstatement options, exploring a mutually agreeable path forward, all wrapped in that hollow sincerity you only hear from people who have been caught with their pants down and a fire alarm blaring. They offered reinstatement. Same salary, same title, same reporting line. I almost laughed. Did they really think I'd come crawling back into the exact cage they threw me out of, like some grateful compliance golden retriever? No, I waited another day. Then I sent a document, 1 page, PDF, no signature needed, just a header, terms for re-engagement, Christina M., no proposals, no we'd love to discuss, no flexible on the following, just bullet points carved in stone. Consultant status only. No W-2, no employee badge, no manager, triple previous salary, not negotiable. All grant certifications, filings, and renewals require my sign-off. Access to all compliance systems and audit logs. Board-only reporting line. I answer to no one else. Reimbursement for lost earnings since termination. A formal statement, signed by legal, affirming the legitimacy and necessity of the key person clause under federal contract terms. Final line, acceptance of these terms must be confirmed in writing within 48 hours to avoid noncompliance escalation. I didn't need to bluff. They knew the portal was still locked. They knew they had no way to meet the deadline without me. And they knew that even if they somehow did, the clawback process was already in motion, and no backdated paperwork was going to unring that particular bell. Devin, to his credit, tried to argue, tried to rally, told the board that bringing me back under those terms would set a dangerous precedent. Trent reportedly looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, what's dangerous is losing $3 million because you fired the one person who knew what they were doing." The vote wasn't even close. I got a signed acceptance letter by morning. Not a word about my previous termination. Not a single line about how they regretted anything. But I didn't need their regret. I had their leverage. I walked back into the building 3 days later quietly through the side entrance. No security badge, no HR onboarding, just a consultant's temp pass in a private office on the 5th floor, 2 doors down from legal. I didn't decorate. No mug, no frog, no post-its. Just my laptop, my login token, and access to the systems that now reported directly to me. Cody left a sticky note on the desk that read, "Sorry, didn't know." I crumpled it. Not out of spite, just efficiency. Within an hour, I was in the portal. The red warning still glowed, key person certification, inactive. I clicked the prompt, typed my credentials, verified my token, watched the status flip to active Christina M. The system purred back to life, funding lines unlocked, timers reset. Clawback paused, not canceled, but paused long enough for a formal letter to be submitted, which, of course, I drafted and signed, and copied to 4 different agencies and one very nervous CFO. Later that afternoon, a senior board member knocked softly on my door. "We're lucky you agreed to come back," he said. "No," I replied. "You're lucky I didn't hold a grudge." He smiled, unsure if I was joking. I didn't clarify, because the truth was I wasn't back for them. I was back to protect the work. The grants. The progress we'd made under the radar, the innovations those funds supported. Teams who still believed in doing things the right way. And maybe, just a little, I was back to watch Devin squirm when he realized what I'd built wasn't just a spreadsheet castle, it was a fortress. And he was no longer welcome inside. The meeting wasn't on the calendar. That's how you know it's bad, when no one adds a Zoom link, no snacks are ordered, and legal's already seated before you walk in. They called it a leadership alignment session, which was code for someone's about to get stripped like an old transmission in a junkyard. It happened on a Wednesday, midday, quiet. No emails went out, just a few discreet calls. One by one, the board members filed into the glass conference room on the 8th floor, eyes forward, lips tight. Devin showed up 10 minutes late, holding a smoothie the color of artificial intelligence and arrogance. He grinned, the same smirk he wore when he fired me. "Afternoon," he said, trying to sit at the head of the table. Trent, the board chair, gestured for him to take the seat on the side. No explanation, just a polite repositioning of power. Legal Marty cleared his throat and began reading from a thick packet already sitting in front of each attendee. Section 3.4b of the Clean Energy Initiative Contract. Section 2.1d of the Rural Deployment Fund. Section 6.3a of the Carbon Capture Pilot Agreement. Devin's grin started to fade like cheap laminate in the sun. These sections all refer to one individual, Christina M., as the designated key person with mandatory agency pre-approval required prior to any personnel change. No such approval was sought, and as of today, 3 clawback proceedings have been initiated. Devin interrupted. We're working on the filings. It's not set in stone, Marty didn't flinch. It is set in stone, Devin. This isn't a quarterly budget variance. It's a federal breach. Devin scoffed. She was overpaid. It was redundant work. Grant reporting can be automated. Trent tapped the table once. Devin stopped. Trent leaned forward, opened the folder in front of him, and slid one document across the table, slowly, deliberately. Devin looked down. It was a printout of the clause, highlighted, underlined, signed. He read the line with my name on it, out loud. Designated key person Christina M. Removal or reassignment without written agency approval constitutes breach and may trigger funding revocation. Then, quieter, softer, like the words betrayed him. We're dead. Trent didn't answer. He just nodded at HR, who had been sitting silently in the back of the room. They stood, walked over to Devin, whispered something. He blinked. No, no, wait, you're not serious. HR didn't blink back. Look, this isn't how we handle executives, Devin said, standing now. Let's be reasonable. You can't just, but they could. And they did. No speech, no outburst. Just a hand gently resting on his shoulder, guiding him out of the room like a misbehaving child being removed from a church pew. No one clapped. No one even made eye contact. Devin left without his smoothie. The door shut behind him with a finality you could feel in your fillings. Trent turned to the room. Effective immediately, Christina M. is re-engaged under the consulting agreement as reviewed. Board-only reporting line. Full grant authority. Triple rate. No one objected. No one dared. I wasn't in the room. I didn't need to be. My terms had already passed the point of negotiation. They weren't a favor. They were a firewall. The next morning, I received an official letter from legal confirming all conditions had been executed. New compensation structure, consultant credentials, full access restored. It ended with a line I'd never seen in any company correspondence before. Thank you for safeguarding the company's future. I printed it, framed it, hung it on the wall of my spare bedroom, where my new office was already running more efficiently than any corner of their glass tower. And Devin, last I heard, he updated his LinkedIn to strategic consultant seeking new opportunities. Didn't mention Innovatech. Didn't mention the $3.2 million. Didn't mention me. But somewhere in his download folder, there's a PDF with my name on it. And every time he sees it, I hope he remembers. Cold justice doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence. And a locked portal he'll never get back into. The boardroom looked exactly the same as when I left it, same fake mahogany table, same too bright LED lighting, same conference phone that still clicked every 8 seconds like it was recording for the NSA. But the energy? Different. This time they were quiet. No one offered me a seat. I took the one at the far end of the table, not at the head, not at the foot, just centered, right where the control lives. I opened my laptop, logged in. The federal grant portal flickered onto the screen like a digital pulse monitor. For weeks it had displayed the same message, like a warning sign taped to a locked door. Key person certification. Missing everything was writing on that line. Payroll was suspended for 2 divisions. Vendor contracts were frozen. An innovation partnership with a clean energy startup had been put on indefinite hold. Millions in potential growth reduced to a single glowing error on a government web page. They watched in absolute silence as I typed in my credentials. One keystroke at a time. Multi-factor authentication. Biometric confirmation. Token verification. And then, without fanfare, the red banner faded to green. Key person certification. Active Christina M. The room didn't cheer. These weren't the kind of people who clap for salvation they didn't understand. But I saw the CFO exhale. I saw the board chair drop his pen and lean back like the tension in his spine had just given up. Across from me sat the new COO, some fresh-faced MBA with a LinkedIn headshot that probably still smelled like cologne. He hadn't said a word since I walked in. Marty, seated beside him with the weight of 3 clawbacks still hanging in the air, turned slowly and asked, "Did you read the clause?" The new COO blinked, looked to Trent, looked back at the portal. "I skimmed it," he said. Marty didn't respond. Just nodded once and took a note in his legal pad, like he was already drafting the next compliance protocol based on this very moment. I clicked into the portal's administrative section, my section, and began making updates. Quietly, deliberately, I navigated to the clause controls buried 6 levels deep past the standard templates legal never customized, into the section I'd written myself, and I changed it. Designation, key person name, Christina M. Status, irrevocable removal only by funding agency authorization, no more internal overrides. No more transition plans. No more arrogance masquerading as innovation. They wanted the work done right, they could live with the safeguards. I clicked save, logged out, closed the laptop. I'll have updated documentation for all 3 grants by end of day, I said, standing. No signatures needed, already authorized. Trent nodded, standing with me. The others stayed seated. The new COO opened his mouth like he might say something. Maybe a thanks, maybe a defense, maybe a soft apology dressed in synergy buzzwords, but I didn't wait. I turned to the door, paused just long enough to speak without facing them. Funny thing about compliance, it only works if you actually comply. And I walked out. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.